All right,
Cool.
we're recording now.
All right. You're in New York, right?
Yeah, I'm in New York City. I'm
Okay.
in Queens, actually.
Okay.
Not that that matters necessarily,
Uh,
but
it's all the same to me, I guess, kind of to some degree, as it pertains to the city. I don't know the city well enough
you
to.
you've never been to New York?
No, I have. I've got family out there. Yeah, I've experienced New York. Just when it comes to like Harlem, Brooklyn, Queens, the layout of things, I'm not super clear on, but
Yeah,
uh,
it's pretty easy to get around if you once you stay here for a little bit of time. It's not that hard. The layout's not hard. Not compared to Tokyo. I went to Tokyo a few months ago, and that's crazy.
yeah, 40 million people. Yeah,
That's just and the I don't want to call it the subway system because they don't call it the subway, but the train system is
mm,
immense. It's like unbelievable.
gotcha. Dude, and to hear that from someone from New York that's
Oh,
quite a state.
when I came back to New York, I felt like I was in a small town. It felt
Like a rural town where
like rinky dink kind of little town.
that's crazy. Yeah. I was born in Vegas and raised in Reno Sparks, which is north of Vegas. And it's probably a fifth the size of Vegas, if that. I don't even think it's that big, but I understand the comparison for sure.
I don't even really know how big Vegas is. I went there once, but only like a layover at the airport, and I just
Gotcha.
like could look out the window, and I didn't really know how big Vegas is. I just see it represented as like, oh, when I flew over it, I saw it.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of interesting how it's just a desert. There's nothing, and then all of a sudden there's a miniature Statue of Liberty and a bunch like pyramids and stuff.
Right. Yeah. I think there's like 3 million people almost there. It's grown a lot and the nature of it's changed. Like Vegas in its heyday in the 50s was like kind of run by the mob, Italian mob.
Yeah, I know. I saw The Godfather many
Word.
times.
Okay.
I read the book too, so I got a little more inside information.
Awesome. And since those days, corporations have taken over, and sort of the identity of it has also changed with that. But let's get into what we're here to chat about. I found your Facebook post interesting. You said something to the effect of looking for someone that is willing to talk about key.
Yeah,
Um,
and I've gotten a lot of responses, so this is actually probably going to turn into a series of
awesome.
conversations.
That's cool.
And I didn't just want to speak to like well-known sensei, you know, I wanted to just speak to people who practice Aikido
Yeah,
or even if it's not Aikido, a martial art that uses the concept of ki or chi.
absolutely. Yeah, and I would say that it's like when it comes to my Aikido, the first Aikido class I took was in 2003. I think it was probably fall of 2003. I enrolled in a semester with our local dojo who put a class on through the university. And at the time, like I was like searching for answers in life, like Buddhism and enlightenment and stuff like that. And the thing that I loved about Aikido was it was like it seemed clear to me that it was an enlightenment path. And I haven't been the greatest curricular Aikido student. It's like I've been on my own path trying to figure this stuff out. I have a great sensei, like when it comes to his pedigree and time in Japan, like there aren't many people in the world that compare to him, at least from a Western standpoint. Um,
Can I
so I've been,
ask? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but can I ask
yeah,
who your sensei is?
yeah, Vince Salvatore. He's been in Reno since 2002. And he was under Morihiro Saito for around 10 years in Japan through the Iwama school. Um, and it's like when it comes to, again, just getting back to my own practice and I haven't been a great curricular student. My first,
Sorry to interrupt again, but I'm not really sure I have a full grasp of what you mean by curricular.
I guess just going with the curriculum of the school, if you will. I don't have high rank in Aikido. It's like, and I don't think, and part of my, I like my ukemi outclasses my rank by many levels. Um, I'm very confident in that. And when it comes to, I think my technical ability, I feel like I'm outclassing my rank too in ways. That's a biased opinion. Um, I guess when it comes to doing kata, right? Like I haven't been a good student of the kata, if you will.
I got you.
Because I've been trying to figure out this key thing. I've been studying, like, I've taken Aikido as this literal practice or opportunity to connect with the cosmos and use that in a creative way. And I've been very literal about that in my own practice. I don't know if you've read the Tao at all, the Tao Te Ching.
Oh yeah, I first read it like 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, and
Yeah,
I go back to it every once in a while. I know I love Taoism. That's one of
I do
my.
too. It's
I've read The Secret of the Golden Flower.
okay. I have not read that, but
Oh, you got to read that. That's a good one. That's
cool.
good. I don't know if I could explain it to you, but it's like an esoteric Taoist text.
Okay. What's the name of it again?
The Secret of the Golden Flower.
All right. In Taoism, there's this teaching of like those who first find the Tao that understand it, like give everything to practice it essentially. And I would I would liken my Aikido journey to being like that, where, I identified Aikido as an opportunity to connect with the cosmos. And that's been my journey, is understanding how to use that creatively, um, and within the context of a martial art, but also a martial art that's harmonious. I take
That
both of those. Yeah, go ahead.
so when we're talking about Tao, since you brought it up,
Mm-hmm.
do you equate the Do in Aikido with the Tao and the Tao Te Ching? Because it's the same character.
Sure. I've never made that connection, to be honest, but yeah, I mean, now that you're saying that, yes.
I do when I'm feeling like my most cosmically esoteric in my mind.
Yeah,
I'll
I
definitely
like that.
make that a correlation just for my own benefit, just to keep
Yeah,
myself interested.
for sure. And there was a time where I was reading Taoism quite a bit, and I'm like, okay, so Aikido is just an application or practice of the Tao, like, put it one way.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you. I'll send you a copy of The Secret of the Golden Flower, like PDF. Like it's been in print forever. It's old.
Okay,
There's one with a introduction by Carl Jung.
okay,
He was
yeah,
really into it at the time.
that's awesome.
Like I
Um,
said, I'm not even sure I get it at all. Like I read it and I loved it, but I don't know what it's about. I can't even. It's
gotcha. But you're saying that it provides you value, right? Like in a consciousness sense or something.
Yeah. While I read it, it's like fun to read. It just gets into like I think it has to do more with meditation.
Okay.
I'm on the spot right now. Like I haven't really thought about it for a while.
Yeah.
I just know that when I read it, I got something out of it, and I have copies of it, PDFs or whatever. But
Awesome.
it's a little bit above my capacity to explain it in without going back and looking through it again. I mean, like, oh yeah, that's what it is. Because
Understood. Yeah. And it's like when it comes to, it's like we're both American, Western Americans, it's like, I don't know your background spiritually and stuff like that, but when it comes to becoming students of these foreign teachings, like it's not always the easiest to articulate what the definition is of them, because we're not from it, right? Is
right,
that fair?
and you don't want to like you know you don't want to just say it in your own words too much because then you feel like you're appropriating it. Kind of like it's.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
I could explain things in my own words all day, and then I might be wrong. So you know,
Sure. But I think getting wrong is part of the process of getting it right too, you know? So it's like, that's where it's like having the freedom to fail and the room to get it wrong matters. Um, because without it, it's like, you know, you could be discouraged not to do it at all. So for whatever that's worth. Um, I sent you a picture in your Facebook post that I put together of, it's a picture of O-sensei describing the geometries in Aikido. And then the picture right next to it is of what's called the 64 tetrahedron. I found out about the 64 tetrahedron through
that's
this.
Plato. That's from Plato.
I don't know if Plato came up with the 64 tetrahedron. I think it came after him. But it's of a similar vein. So you're familiar with sacred geometry.
Right, like the Pythagoreans.
Yeah, and I don't know that aspect of it. Like I came through this researcher named Nassim Haramein, and he he had the Resonance Science Foundation for a long time. That's been renamed. Like I've been out of the loop on this stuff, but it's been renamed to the International Space Federation now. He's a theoretical physicist, and his whole work is devoted to essentially putting sacred geometry into the scientific context. And like he's after the unified field of physics essentially, and he's very like as far as I comprehend it, it's like sacred geometry is the underlying structure of the cosmos, and that we can tap into these forms and patterns to use the energy of the cosmos through understanding this geometry. And that is really my interpretation of Aikido and what O-sensei was onto. And I think if O-sensei was alive today, or if these teachings were around during his time, he would have, I guess, confirmed them and vice versa. And that's where my Aikido has gone. Like it's like since finding out about this through Nassim Haramein, my Aikido has been a devotion to. It's been a practice of trying to, or a journey to practice this sacred geometry through movement, um, through a martial path, but also a harmonious path, like blending and harmonizing the martial and the harmonious. And that's in a nutshell. You know, when it came to your original question, what I think key is within the context of Aikido and the physical universe. I think there's another level deeper to that, which is consciousness. But as it pertains to physics, that's where I've really kind of, I guess, established my foundation for Aikido and comprehending the physical universe, if you will.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways we can go from here because there was so many things you just said that we could branch off from. But
Cool.
when you say you're practicing this sacred geometry, is that
Mm-hmm.
through movement?
Yeah.
I've often thought that the techniques that we practice have like a four-dimensional quality that allows us to practice some kind of geometrical shapes in time and space that
Yeah.
I'm, I'm not sure how much of that was on purpose, built into it. I don't really know, but
Sure.
I got into. Have you ever heard of Ouspensky? P.D. Ouspensky?
No.
He's a Russian mathematician, but he wrote a few books on the fourth dimension
Okay.
fourth dimension, fifth dimension,
Okay.
and I got into that around when I was around 30, so that's about almost 20 years ago now. But
Okay.
when I first got into like the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension, I was trying to bring that into my practice. So I understand what you mean by
Awesome.
trying to bring the mathematical concepts into your practice.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering how you go about it. Like, do you do like the specific shapes themselves, or
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to practicing any technique, right, that a teacher will set up, um, it's for me, it's trying to execute that teaching, the technique we're working on in the best way possible, but understanding that emanating from my center is this matrix of geometry that I'm bathed in, that like the Nassim Haramein. Um,
1 second, can you just spell his name for people listening, or me
yeah,
too?
yeah. Okay, so his first name's Nassim, Nassim, and Haramein is Haramein.
I'll put a link to. I'll write his name down in my Substack so people could look at it later. Because I'm curious now. Because
Sounds good.
when you
Yeah.
mention sacred geometry, that takes me back to like the Pythagoreans and Plato.
Hmm.
Because have you ever read Plato Timaeus?
I have not.
I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure if it's an octahedron or what did
Hmm.
you say, tetrahedron?
Yeah,
Because in
Nassim's deal is the 64 tetrahedron, and
oh,
it's yeah.
okay, because in Plato, it's called the Timaeus, and it's based on Pythagorean cosmology and the geometry of existence. Basically, how I mean, it gets deep. The
Hmm.
God created these geometric shapes that could then create reality, right?
Yeah, sure.
And I'm pretty sure that this guy or Nassim,
Yeah,
say his name one more time.
Nassim Haramein.
Nassim Haramein. I'm pretty sure that the foundation of what he's talking about almost definitely has to go back to Pythagoreans and Plato, because almost everything does in terms of sacred geometry. So
Right.
I'm curious about it too.
And I don't know to what degree that's built into Nassim's work. I'm sure it's integrated, that he's connected with that stuff. I think his journey has been a little bit more personal, I guess, less academic, if you will. Um, and he's just grown into this. Like I would encourage you to look up the International Space Federation of his, just to get a feel for what kind of work they're doing. Like
That's not gonna put me on any lists, is it?
I don't think
No,
so. No,
I'm just kidding. I don't.
not yet.
I'm probably on them already anyway. So it's
Fair enough. um, yeah, my interpretation of Nassim's work is that they're trying to tap the underlying fabric of space time to create free energy, um, and like technologies to help humanity. Like that's the gist of his work. And I've been out of it for a while. Like for a long time, I was really trying to get connected to it and participate. But I came across transcendental meditation 4 years ago, and that was kind of a shift for me when it came to that field of work, I guess, um, because it put me into consciousness field, and I think consciousness is the most fundamental and most the absolute unified field based off of where things have gone for me with that. Um, but the sacred geometry and Aikido stuff is absolutely relevant in my life. I practice it as as much as I do, which I apply it at work, in the dojo, at home.
and
Um,
is this? I'm sorry. Is this through visualization?
yeah,
Like
that's absolutely a fair way of saying that for
like
sure.
not imagination. I don't want to say it's imaginary, but through images in your mind.
Yeah, visualization's fair. And interpreting the teachings of Nassim Haramein and how that fits in with Aikido. So if that's fair. So it's based in my own research and understanding from this theoretical physicist and our great teacher, O Sensei. Which, yeah. And what's interesting about your Facebook post, you mentioned something about like people that know it's real or aren't afraid to talk about it. Like, I don't know if it's a problem in Aikido that people aren't, in some sense, I feel like people aren't accessing their energetic body and power well enough. That's my judgment. And I don't, I'm not here to piss anyone off, but in some ways, I think Aikido as a whole is not fulfilling its potential, and that's my take. I think it's hardly scratching at the surface of its potential. And there's a lot of opportunity in people opening up to these ideas, especially with your point of understanding that ki is real. And we have, I think, a responsibility to tap into it and utilize it for ourselves, for the art, for the world, for every reason.
In what way would more people, let's just say, cultivating our ki, let's just say if we had more people actively working on cultivating our ki, I guess then that would mean we would be aligning ourselves with the cosmos more.
Yeah.
And
Or
that
or
would,
God, if you want to
okay.
put it that way, or yeah, like, or accessing our highest potential.
Well, I'm with you on that. I do believe that was the original intent of O Sensei was, I mean, it's no, it's bound to be controversial no matter what we say. Like people will always pick it apart or whatever. And
Sure.
I'm I'm a little bit blustery. Like I'll just say stuff, and then it doesn't always have to be. I don't always 100% think before I speak, which gets me in trouble sometimes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not an academic. I'm not a scholar, so I don't really care that much. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
I could talk about God. I could talk all day. It doesn't bother me.
Right.
That doesn't mean I'm 100% sure of anything I say. But
Yeah.
if I didn't speak unless I was 100% sure of what I said, I would never speak. You know.
Right.
So words are concepts, and we explore them through through conversation. We're exploring these concepts,
It's a part
right?
of learning. It's a part of progress,
And at
for
the
sure.
end of the day, everybody dies, and like you know what I'm saying. Like there's no one like lives forever through their knowledge. Like it's not like
Well,
your knowledge isn't going to get you anything other than just people think you're smart. It's at the end of the day.
right. I think on the other side of that too, like, I take the standpoint that, like, when we pass on, like, the entropy, I guess, of our life, it continues evolving. Like, whatever we turn into, we blend into the energy of the cosmos. Like, there is still this progression of evolution, development, etc., of what we were, that I think continues. And it's like, to the point of Osensei and his original intention with the art, it's like, I think he's still doing his work. Like, I take that literally. I think there's a reason we keep his picture at the front of the dojo, to remember him. But I think there's more to it. I take it literally that he is continuing his work in a different field than we are currently, and through us, and that excites me, because it means he's still teaching. And I think any real dedicated practitioner of Aikido would agree with that. If they didn't, I don't know that I could really would want to train whatever. Like, that's part of the beauty of this art, is continuing his legacy and pushing it through the evolution of the world, and making it a better place. And when it comes to my criticism of Aikido not achieving its potential, it has to do with the fact that our world, as it continues to go in my lifetime, just seems to get worse and worse and worse. And here is this amazing discipline that has so much potential to make it better. It deserves its opportunity to do it. It has to insert itself and continue that work. And it does, right? It has its own natural continuity, but it takes people waking up to, I think, this idea of ki and accessing their infinite potential, their infinite power, and applying it and using it and developing it and making mistakes and stepping on people's toes and offending them if it has to, and continuing the process, you know.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page. I think we're on the same page. I agree with you that O Sensei in spirit is continuing to teach
Yeah,
Aikido. Right.
yeah.
I'm I'm a believer in spirit. Let's just put it that way. I'm working on a book right now that's I don't it's such an obscure subject, but have you ever heard of like Neoplatonism and theurgy?
I've heard that term Neoplatonism, but I don't know, a lot what that means necessarily.
So they're not to get too far off track, but it's related because there's it's well, I'm trying to relate it in my book that I'm writing. So I'll kind of run it by you a little bit. So the I guess it's late antiquity, the first couple centuries AD, the philosophers that they were using Plato and Aristotle's writings, but
Mm-hmm.
they were viewing them almost in a religious way. They were creating a religion out of it,
Gotcha.
right? And there was a practice called theurgy, which meant like God work, right?
Okay.
And and it was involving rituals, and
Mm-hmm.
it's still kind of mysterious. Like no one really knows what the rituals were,
Yeah.
but these were philosophers. They were very intelligent people, and
Yeah.
they were just not willing to let go of the divine aspect of life,
Yeah.
right? Like
They wanted to apply their philosophy is what it sounds like. You know.
right, and they weren't letting go of the animistic qualities of life. They weren't letting go
Mm-hmm.
of the belief in the soul and the belief in the gods and the belief that the universe is alive, like that kind of shit.
Yeah.
Like
Awesome. Yeah.
so my theory. So they had this practice called theurgy, which is supposed to bring you into direct communion with the gods, right? And so my book is about, first of all, it's laying out that foundation of what theurgy was through the ancient Greeks, whatever, and then it brings us to O Sensei, who was in essence practicing theurgy
That's awesome. Yeah.
through through some of the spiritual practices of Omoto.
Okay.
Have you gotten into that at all? The Omoto,
Is
the
that it? Is that his Shinto stuff?
that's the new religion that started in Japan in the early 20th century by I'm not going to say his name correctly, Onosaburo Deguchi,
Okay.
and they were doing some practices that are strikingly similar to theurgical practices from the Neoplatonists.
Awesome.
So I'm on the just saying all that is just to tell you I'm on the same page with you when it comes to the spiritual side of it.
Awesome. Yeah.
But I think ki is a whole other subject, because there's this concept of ki that is supposed to be what would it be? The underlying animating essence of existence, kind of like the
Okay.
force, the
Sure.
force, the for,
Yeah.
you know.
So
And
I guess one.
I've already gotten into like 37 arguments on Facebook about it,
Hmm.
just in trying to define it. And then I just said it's real. And I'm just saying that. I
Yeah.
don't have, I don't have proof that anything is real.
Yeah.
But
Let's go into that. I mean, like, how would, and this is a kind of a rhetorical question, or maybe literal, take it however you want. Like, is ki physical? Is it non-physical? Is it both? Is it consciousness? What is it? It's like,
well, it manifests itself within the physical because we are physical. And if we're experiencing it through our bodies, it has to be physical while it's in us. But I don't know if
yeah,
it might not always be physical. I don't know.
sure. Like in quantum physics, I know it's like there's studies of particles being waves and solids, right? Like they that I'm giving my best understanding of that, and that's I think probably fair to say the nature of ki is that it can blend into a non-material and a material. um and energy is probably a good word for it, non-material and or physical energy.
Okay, and then what? Like is energy real? Like you could ask the question, is energy real? And you can argue about that for days.
Yeah.
I know people have invented machines or tools that can measure certain things, but every
Hmm.
generation there's a new paradigm where they invent a new vocabulary, and then they say that all the old vocabulary is wrong because now they have new tools that measure something else and they give it a different name, and
Yeah.
they say that all the people that existed up until now were stupid. That I don't buy that.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm with you. It's like, we can't replicate the pyramids of Giza today, right? And there's theories that they're tens of thousands of years old, not just the 3,000 that we think. And it's based. There's guys that think that advanced technology that we do not have today is what is responsible for a lot of ancient sites around the world. So I'm with you there. That it's like when it comes to what we think we know and us thinking that we're the most advanced, um, you know, we aren't as advanced as I think a lot of us want to believe we are. And I question the extent to which that's intentional. The suppression of human capabilities is intentional so that people can be used essentially. That's a whole nother topic, but
yeah, that's a topic I'm willing to discuss at length, but probably not in this within this
yeah,
conversation because
agreed.
we're supposed to stick to the point about key.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
do our best to talk about key. So
word.
when someone asked me if how I know it's real, my my response was that, and this is totally anecdotal, but I know there are days when I'm completely depressed. And I mean like depressed like I have no energy or hope for the future in a
Hmm.
sense, right? Where it's just I feel like there's nothing in my body that's going to give me the energy to continue, right? And then I'll still go to the dojo, right? And I'll practice Aikido for 2 hours. And after class, I'll feel completely invigorated. Like
Yeah,
I'll feel much better about myself and
for
about
sure.
everything,
Yeah,
right? So if the concept is called ki that you're exercising when you practice Aikido, you're
yeah,
you're using your ki while you practice. That's so that's
Yeah, 100%.
That's enough for me, but like it doesn't take a lot. I don't need uh like I don't need a seismographic or like some kind of machine invented to measure whether or not there really is this really key there really is key in the universe. Like I don't really need that. For me, the concept of key is already like satisfied in that little story I just said. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. You're familiar with the term misogi?
oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I
But
think
just do me a favor and just define it, because I have people who listen to this who don't practice Aikido and they don't know these terms. So if you could
okay.
just,
Yeah, so misogi is purification essentially. And we at our dojo we have a practice where in the spring and before winter we have misogi days where we clean the dojo. And before we get into that though, we all grab a bokken or wooden sword and make cuts throughout the entirety of the dojo and surrounding it. The whole idea is that as the sword cuts, it cleanses, it purifies. So, within the context of Aikido, as a technique is applied or practiced, there's a purification, there's a misogi um, of ki. I think it's appropriate to articulate that. And that's misogi's been a huge thing for me in Aikido. It's something that I fell in love with completely. That purification aspect, that renewal, that enlightenment aspect, I think comes through misogi. Um, and that you know, I think that word paired with ki is like, I forget the Japanese word for enlightenment, but I think misogi plus ki equals enlightenment, to put it one way.
yeah, I'm definitely gonna send you some books that I have, because the the roots of these practices are very interesting. Where misogi comes from,
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it also comes from Shinto and Omoto.
yeah, yeah. I think,
But
yeah.
there's also this other Japanese religion that no one I never heard before. I've never heard of before, called Shugendo. Have you ever heard
Hmm.
of Shugendo?
I'm not sure, maybe, but let's say no.
This Have you ever heard of Yamabushi? The Yamabushi?
Maybe.
They're like mountain hermits. They're
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a set.
I'm
They
familiar
live
with
in
them.
the mountains, and they do these purification rituals. And that might be where misogi comes from. I'm not 100% sure,
Okay.
but they're said to have mystical powers. They're mountain. They they train in the mountains
Yeah.
for spiritual practices. It's but
Yeah.
the religion was outlawed.
Gotcha.
Shugendo, Shugendo,
Okay.
and the people who practiced it were called Yamabushi. Well, I'm not saying all of the people who practiced it were called Yamabushi, but it's it's interesting. There's not really that much about it written in English, unfortunately, that I could find. But
Okay.
just reading the Wikipedia article is, you know, it'll get you excited, kind of, if you're into that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's a quick Google search says it combines Shinto and Buddhism. The term Yamabushi literally means one who bows down in the mountains. It's cool.
Yeah, and O Sensei went the time when his father died, and they say he went a little crazy and went off into the mountains and was practicing his sword alone in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
They they compared him to a Yamabushi, I think.
Cool. Just probably seeking some misogi and further clarity on stuff.
Yeah, it makes me wish I lived near mountains. There's no mountains near me.
Gotcha. We have a decent set of mountains near us, which I'm grateful for. It's one thing that I think keeps me in Reno. They definitely have a mystical quality and powerful.
Do you ever go up into the mountains and practice, like train? Is that
No,
is that
I've attended. I forget who puts it on. There's a seminar in Tahoe during Memorial Day weekend every year. Um, I've attended that once, and it was a great time. But I haven't spent time like in the forest alone.
Do you know what Tengu are? Tengu.
Yeah,
Have
and
it.
I don't know if the Tengu are good or bad. My wife and I were wed in Tsubaki Grand Shrine of America Shinto shrine that was in Granite Falls, Washington, Everett, Washington.
Oh yeah, really? That's cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. Um, and he had some Tengu masks there. Um, Koichi Barish, who was one of the first non-Japanese. He was the first and only non-Japanese Shinto priest in the world for a long time, from what I understand. Um, but he trained Aikido for. He still is training Aikido and teaching Aikido. Um, I think he trained and taught Aikido for 30 years before he got into the Shinto stuff. Um, but he's got had some amazing Tengu masks on the wall up there, and I don't quite know if Tengu are good or bad or what, but I
Sorry to keep putting you on the spot and asking you if you've read this or if you've read that, but have you ever read this book called The Demon's Sermon on the Martial Arts?
no. Go ahead
Uh,
though.
well, again, it's another book I can't explain within a few sentences, but it's written it's it's written by a swordsman who, and I'm not saying that this actually happened to him, but the story is that he goes into the mountains to learn from the Tengu and falls asleep under the trees, and then he overhears their conversation, and they go through all of the. It's. I mean, you got to read it because I will never do it justice. I've read it like a couple times, but I'm not gonna do it justice. It's just cool to me. It's a good book.
Cool, cool,
It's it's
cool.
interesting. I'm my own personal opinion is that this idea of evil spirits is
Yeah,
is kind of just to lead people astray, because I think getting into like getting in touch with the spiritual side is kind of frowned upon to do it by yourself. So
sure.
religions have always invented this idea of evil spirits to stop people from kind of exploring spirituality on their own and
Interesting.
having to go through a mediary, right? So I have this. This is just my theory, and I might be wrong, and I'm not. But I feel like all spirits are good. It's just, and this is the Platonic side of me, where I'm a Platonist. That the spirits are good.
Mm-hmm.
Once spirits are enmeshed in matter, that's where trouble starts. But
Gotcha.
that doesn't mean that matter is inherently evil. That just means that matter is inclined to corruption. So
Sure.
it's inevitable that matter will corrupt, but the spirit in imbuing the matter is not subject to the corruption. And that's just that's what I've come to
I
understand
like
through
that.
Platonism, but I understand it sounds risky to some people because they're like, but what if there are evil spirits? Then I'm like, I don't want to take responsibility for telling people there's no such thing as evil spirits. And
Gotcha.
then they go off into the mountains trying to meet a Tengu and get, I don't want responsibility for that, but that's just my opinion. So
Word. No, I respect your take on that. And I don't have a hard opinion, I guess I've got my own opinion, but it doesn't really matter either as far as that goes. And I guess who's to judge what is good and evil? You know, I guess I say that somewhat rhetorically or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how we got off track, but
It's
I
all
think it
good.
was because I was gonna say if I lived near mountains, I definitely would have gone looking for Tengu by now in my life.
That's awesome.
I mean,
Well,
people go to South America to take ayahuasca, right? So
right.
why don't they have like Tengu retreats where you go off into the mountains and do like severe misogi until you get to the state of mind where you can encounter Tengu?
Sure. Maybe check out a Tengu mask and bring it into your home if that's what you need.
Can you make your own? Do they have like Tengu mask making workshops? I'll find one of those.
Sure.
Okay, so we should talk about ki. I mean,
Yeah.
let's get back to ki itself. Now, I have a question
Yeah.
for you, and you might not have the answer. I don't have the answer, but when I first started Aikido, I tended to see the I and the ki as two separate things, right?
Yeah.
Like
They are. Yeah.
you're harmonizing your ki, right?
Yeah.
But I've come to find out over the years that the term Aiki was one term,
Hmm.
right? Like
Okay.
when O Sensei practiced Daito Ryu, when he started practicing Daito Ryu, the term Aiki was already established in martial arts as a principle.
Okay.
Have you ever explored that, or do you,
No, I've never heard that it articulated that way before or framed that way, but
all right? So
I
I have
see
like
that.
a personal story about this. When I was an uchideshi for a year once at New York Aikikai, and I don't know if you're familiar with Sugano Sensei. Do you know who Sugano Sensei is?
I'm sorry, I don't think so.
Well, he was one of the Shihan that was with O Sensei when he was older, and then he was sent to Australia and started. I don't know if he started Aikido in Australia, but he was influential in Aikido
Okay.
in Australia, and he was
Yeah.
also in Belgium, and then he was in New York. So he's a Shihan that lived with O Sensei or studied with O Sensei,
I've seen him before.
and he used to have these talks where he would just before class he would sit for like 15 minutes and he would just talk to whoever was listening. And one day he said that the there was this concept of Aiki, right?
Mhm.
And
Okay.
and it used to be that you did not want to enter Aiki with your opponent or with your attacker or whatever. What
Interesting.
what the Aiki meant was they kind of they like take over your psyche, kind of like you and
Like a
they're
yeah, almost hypnotized or entranced.
almost hypnotized. Yeah, almost
Yeah.
hypnotized. But
Yeah.
or it's like they fully understand your rhythm. They're like they
Mhm.
fully understand your like the
Yeah.
your rhythm. It's hard
They've got
to
they've got
articulate.
your energetic and your physical body kind of locked in.
Right. But
Yeah.
then over time there were martial arts that claim to teach how to use Aiki, right? How to like they reversed it, kind of like how if you enter Aiki with someone else and then you practice within that, right?
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
Sugano Sensei said was that Owa Sensei took the terms Aiki and and changed it into meaning, harmonizing ki, like
I see. I see.
so taking this concept and taking the concept of like dominating someone
Yeah.
and changing it to the, because AI in Japanese has different meanings. There's harmony, but then
Mm-hmm.
there's also love. And
Yeah.
Sugano Sensei said O Sensei was like using the play on words that it was love, that the I
Sure.
was love.
Gotcha. Well, it's like my understanding is that they're like the U.S. after bombing after World War II put sanctions on Japan to not continue practicing martial arts. Um, and O Sensei proceeded. This is my understanding that he proceeded with Aikido in that it was a harmonious art, and I attribute this similar to the Brazilian art capoeira. Like capoeira has an interesting foundation where it was slaves disguising a martial art as dance, to keep slave owners from identifying that they were practicing a fighting art. Where Osensei proceeds with a harmonious art to transcend a, a a foreign power putting controls on them. And I could see Aiki one, Aiki is one and Aiki as two separate. It's like, why not use both? And to the point of Aiki is singular, I think when it comes to two training partners practicing Aikido, it's like I want that test. It's like when I can put when me and a great training partner can put each other within that context of Aiki together, but we're taking care of each other at the same time, there's that there is that feedback of challenging one another appropriately and again caring for one another. And that's the the real beauty of Aikido to me is like you're challenging, providing people a challenge to a degree that's useful for their development and vice versa. Like that is like the real true beauty and power of this art is you're not trying to dominate them and bring them shame and bring yourself pride and power. It's a real ultimately it's a true win-win dynamic or a win-win paradigm. Um, and that's again, I think, an important concept when it comes to the practice of Aikido. Um, that we're all winning, and that's a hard thing for I think people to understand the value in, right? Because we're so programmed to be like, I have to defeat this person or I have to win this sport or this contest or whatever. But I think in the real big picture of Aikido, it means win-win. And that's the blessing that it has to offer the world, to teach the world how to do that, how we use our ki to help our partner win, even an enemy to win, and we use our ki to help ourselves to win.
Yeah, it's deep, right? Like I really don't know how intentional it all was, because it's sometimes it just seems like it's too deep to be intentional from the beginning that that's what its aim was. Because
Yeah,
but it does give us these tools that really I don't really get from anything else. Like there's been no other activity in my life where I could go and like exert the amount of energy I could exert,
Mm-hmm.
right? Without, like you said, without like embarrassing anyone else or frustrating anybody else. You know, like you can practice really hard and
Yeah,
you could be really safe.
definitely.
But you have to learn how to control yourself. That and you have to learn how to stay balanced
Yeah,
and and not overshoot, like not go too crazy.
you've got to maintain an etiquette.
Right. And if you got two people or more than two people, if you got people who are practicing who are all on the same page with that, you can go pretty hard. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you could go pretty hard and no one gets hurt and no, like you
Yeah,
said, no one wins, no one loses.
yeah,
I like the parallel to capoeira too. I think of that sometimes. Like, and I also think like that's why I never get into these debates of does Aikido work? Is Aikido blah blah blah? Because in a
yeah.
way, I want it to be a little bit secret. I want you to think that it doesn't work. I
Sure.
want people. I don't care if people. If you're curious about practicing, come try it. If you're not,
Right.
don't. But I don't really care if people think, oh, it's not effective, because I'd rather them think it's not effective, so that I could just, like it's secret. You're not supposed to brag to people how effective you are martially. You're just supposed to say, oh yeah, okay, I'm glad you think that. Like, who cares? What
Right. And that's where people don't know what they don't know, you know. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to go into that, but like there's opportunity in Aikido that there you don't get in any other art because of the angles and the forms and patterns that we train in. And it's like at the highest level it's an invincibility art. Like I don't care what anyone says about that. Like
I'm just gonna chime in though with it has the potential to be an invincibility art, but I think you gotta almost have to go to the mountains and practice to such a you have to practice, like,
yeah, you've got to you've
you
got
gotta,
to
because O
you
Sensei, if you read O Sensei's biography, he put in the work.
you've got to you've
He
got to
was
apply the key. You've got to apply the key and the vigor to make it an invincibility art. It has to have that if it's going to be that, which I think that's what it was meant for. That's a beautiful thing. It's like that's a good thing.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I don't know if anything is invincible, so I'm not sure if there is an
That's fine.
invincibility. But if that's the goal, then
Sure.
and you're training as if that's the goal, I feel like it could get you pretty far.
Definitely. And that I think it speaks to the importance of key and the application of key. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. And that the the limits of what you put into it and what you get out of it are literally limitless.
Well, I mean, I should go with your invincibility argument, because when I said I was writing a book about theurgy and Aikido, that's what the theurgist aims, is to become immortal, and
Yeah.
that's like the Taoist monks were striving to be immortal. And of course, I think that means more in the metaphysical sense. I don't think they mean your body is going to be immortal.
I'm with you
So
there. Yeah.
so okay, so let's dig into that a little bit. When you say invincible, are you talking about like the aspect of your being that is immortal is invincible, or do you mean physically invincible?
Yeah, I mean I would challenge by saying that if we were practicing an invincible at an invincible intensity, maybe our body does become invincible. You know, maybe we do retain the ability to live forever. But but I think for the sake of practicality or rationalism, that we can go off of the sort of fundamental essence of our being is invincible. So I plan, I accept I'm going to die, but my soul isn't. My consciousness is going to become one with the greater consciousness of the cosmos. Um, that bigger aspect of my being will be forever. It will be infinite.
Let's just go off on that tangent for a minute, because that's what I'm probably most interested in life, really, is that question. And I I agree with you, but I feel like I'm agreeing with you inherently. Like, I don't know. So my question to you is, like, what you just said, is that something that you've learned in life and that you believe, or do you feel like that's something that's intrinsic to your nature, that you just know that intrinsically? Because some
I think it's
people,
a
I'm
little.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, because
Go ahead.
I feel like there's some people who believe that and some people who don't, and
Sure.
it's almost like they will never convince the other party of
Sure.
the truth of that. And the argument's been going back thousands of years. You know,
Yeah. I think you touch on reincarnation there, where I think it's fair to say that the people that don't believe it will be reincarnated into something as a part of their soul's evolution to one day realizing that. Um, I'm not trying to convince anyone of that. Like, and I think to your question of, like, is that learned, or like, I think part of it is, yeah, like, I grew up Christian, so it's like, you know, under the belief and influence there's an afterlife, I think has informed some of this for me. But through the process of trying to find, a more natural truth or a more real truth, if that's a way of putting it, um, I can't accept any other option. I can't accept that I'm not going to be a part of the bigger thing after this. Um, I think it's impossible for me to do that because I think the nature of life is too beautiful um and awesome to think that it just goes black after this.
yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, I agree. I'm fascinated. Okay,
Mm.
so I've kind of developed this theory that there's a spectrum in human beings of animist to atomist,
Okay.
right? So animist, ANISM,
Mm-hmm.
animism, and atomism, ATO, like atom, the atom, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you go back to the ancient Greeks, there was the atomists who you could go back to their arguments. They're convinced that life is just these collisions between these
Mm-hmm.
tiny particles, and everything that happens after that is like an accident, right?
Okay.
And so there's this strain of thought that goes throughout history, and then there's another strain of thought that's believes in the soul and believes in spirit, and right.
Yeah.
And these two strains are, you can find them throughout history, throughout the written history of human conversation and thought.
Mm-hmm.
So when I and you could see it today, and people you talk to, there's some people who just they're just like, no, I don't believe in the soul, I don't believe in God, I don't believe like it's just
Yeah.
nothing. And then there's people who just do, no matter what.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I'm like, I definitely lean animism. Like, I'm way more prone to believing in ghosts and spirits and that kind of stuff. but I'm fascinated by the people who don't
Sure.
and want want some sort of like um experiment done to prove
Yeah,
it, to make it satisfactory for them.
sure.
So I'm just fascinated by that.
Yeah, I hear you. And I guess to one thing, it's almost like the people that don't believe in something after, it's like, okay, what's the problem there? Like, what problem needs to be solved, or how do I help them see that, or something? And it's like, I guess that question comes up for me. And like, as I get older in life, like I stop worrying about that, I guess. But like it's not my problem to help them, if they can't or won't see it. I'm not going to waste my time and energy trying to convince them. Like I've got, like I feel like death is like the last accomplishment in life. Like it's our last achievement in life before we're blessed by this beauty and glory of what comes after. And I feel like my life work is about setting myself up to have the best possible experience into that afterlife while doing good in this life, as good as I can in this life, so that whatever happens on the other side is I set myself up optimally for that. It's like the complete win-win of what's in this field and what is after it.
That's 100% what the goal of philosophy was stated to be. You know that?
No, but that's
Yeah,
awesome.
that's the ancient philosopher. That's what their goal was to their life was lived to achieve like a good death,
Awesome.
like preparing, like
Yeah. And I think as it relates to Aikido or the samurai, it's like those guys, death was an honorable thing because life was an honorable thing.
well, I don't really know what I could. There's nothing I could really add to that. Like I don't I don't really want to think about it right now. Like I'm not ready to die today,
Me neither.
but
I'm
I
not.
understand. But that's something that says something about our society, that like we're, not our society, but just us as like modern people. Like we've really just, our way of dealing with death is just to ignore it until it happens and then
Yeah.
kind of just be shocked by it.
Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of a knowledge thing, like if we had more knowledge into the afterlife, we would live differently. And some people do, there's
Well,
Christian.
there's also plenty of like near death experience, like studies done. Have you ever looked into those? Like
Yeah,
there's people who do,
absolutely.
they call it NDE research.
Near death experience. Yeah. Yeah. There's a show on Netflix called Surviving Death. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I haven't.
It gets a little wonky in some episodes, but the first one's really great. And that's that, like that first episode, it talks about people that have gone through near death experiences. That's what has really reinforced to me that there is something beyond this life, and that it's a special thing, and that it's worth being as good as you can be in this life to optimize what you get out of the next one.
Yeah, well, I'm not really, like I said, there's nothing I can really add to that. So I we got maybe about 10 minutes left, or so. Let's just try to go back to key. So
Cool. Yeah, I don't know. It's like I don't have a definition for what key is. I'm not a master of that. I think you could make the case that key transforms materially and non-materially. It exists materially and non-materially, and that it's worth using for the sake of and benefit of yourself and your community.
Do you have any key building exercises besides Aikido practice?
Yeah, I mentioned that I practice transcendental meditation, and I picked that up in the September of 2021. It's a very easy practice, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening. The basis of it is consciousness, that through the practice you tap into pure consciousness, and over time you access more and more consciousness, and your practice stays with you throughout the day, and in accessing deeper and further ranges of consciousness. And that consciousness is happiness, blissfulness, higher intelligence, higher empowerment. And it's given me, I mentioned that I think consciousness goes a field beyond energy. I think consciousness is the deepest place to be, and that when it comes to accessing ki, um, that that the further range and depth of one's consciousness, the further their capability is to access and utilize ki.
All right. Well, I think that's a pretty good spot to end because, like, I don't really have anything to add to that. I don't have any meditation practice other than Aikido. Aikido
Right.
is my meditation practice. Maybe I do like I j- I try to like lucid dream, but I
Cool.
know that's different than meditation because I
Sure.
have to lay down. Like I can't do seated meditation.
Gotcha.
I just
Look,
there's just something blocking me from doing it. But
poke around. Look at tm.org. It's the website for transcendental meditation. TM is a money back guarantee. Okay. They promote that everyone can do it, because all you're with TM, you're provided a mantra. It's a unique mantra that's unique to you. It's unique to your energy. And you sit and think the mantra, and the way that it's taught is that your thoughts come in, you're allowed to think in this technique, and that it's a natural part
Mhm.
of the meditation. And but what happens is, as the thoughts come in, you go back to your mantra, and this interplay between thinking and your mantra puts you in the sweet spot of pure consciousness. Um, it's different from other forms. It's very natural and very simple to learn, and um, it's guaranteed to work. So for whatever that's worth, that's not a promotion of TM. It is encouragement of it, though. Like, I highly encourage anyone and everyone to look into it, because I think it is.
but would you say that it's helped your Aikido practice? Has it added to it?
Let me put it this way: TM has confirmed for me every metaphysical idea that I've had about the capabilities of Aikido. TM has confirmed and reinforced that everything that I've thought about the potential of Aikido is possible.
All right, that's good. That's good. I'm probably gonna stop. I'm gonna stop recording now, and then I'll edit it
All right,
like right after that. But
cool. Cool. I appreciate it. Yeah. Go ahead.